Welcome to the Executive Innovation Show podcast, where we bring you real executive conversations with industry game changers and thought leaders. We ask the questions you're thinking, what you're scared to ask, and we make your brain hurt afterward. With your host, Carrie Chitsey Wells, co-founder and CEO of One Touch Video Chat, live video interviews, and the nonprofit Humans Helping Humans.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. This podcast is part of Mental Health Awareness Month, brought to you by Humans Helping Humans. So happy to have on the show today. We're going to be talking about using video to share stories for mental health awareness. Got two amazing ladies on the show today. We're going to be talking about video and film to share stories on mental health awareness, to have conversations, to break down stigmas, and really spread awareness through film. My first guest on the show today, I've got Scilla Andreen. She is an award-winning TV and film industry veteran, the CEO and co-founder of IndieFlix, a global subscription streaming and screening service that really focuses on content for a purpose. She's also the director of the newly released Like, a documentary about the impact on social media on our lives, and producer of Angst, an IndieFlix original documentary that really opens up about the conversations on anxiety and mental health. She's out there with the mission to change the world through film. Scilla, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, I really love starting with the backstory of you are a film veteran, done a lot of amazing stuff in your career, but what really led you to start the nonprofit IndieFlix and really the social impact that you're doing today with mental health?
We don't always come up with these ideas and then go after them. Sometimes life makes that choice for us. I have always lived in the narrative world and TV and movies. I like big sci-fi adventure stuff. And I was really bullied. So I ended up getting involved with a bullying film called Finding Kind, which has an organization behind it called Kind Campaign. And that led me to doing these school screenings. And they're really powerful when you have thousands of schools, watching these movies and having conversation. It changes, it has a positive impact on the community. And a friend of mine had asked me if I would make a movie about mental health. And I just said, no, I'm not touching that topic. It feels heavy. I don't know anything about it. I can't even imagine that somebody, especially a school, would want to watch a movie about mental health. And she kept asking me. We worked together, actually. And a year later, I got a call that she had just died by suicide. And I just thought, how did I not see that? How could I have missed that? So I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to make a movie about mental health. And it's got to be filled with hope and resources and tools, because I serve families, kids ages 10 and up, and educators. And so I dove right into the deep end and started to learn everything I could about mental health. And I realized that anxiety was sort of the best way to approach the topic. Anxiety is something that we all have, and it's actually really good. It's what gets us to sort of jump out of the way of an oncoming car, or to run from the bear, as they say. But what's going on? Why is there such in anxiety-related disorders and depression and suicide? And so I'm happily now in this space of social impact films.
Well, that's awesome. Your films are doing amazing jobs, and they've been screened and continue to be screened on multiple films on thousands of schools and communities and corporations in 50 countries. Talking a little bit about the school and kind of the student side of the folks that are screening the films, and kind of under an hour films that you guys have developed. Are you starting to see schools, you were kind of alluding to it a little bit earlier, are you starting to see schools that are open to having these mental health type conversations, especially with the social media around the depression and anxiety? How has that changed, and how's that being perceived?
Well, I think some of those stats that you just shared, honestly, when I made this movie, I didn't know if anyone would want to watch it. I just suddenly had I was mission driven, and that we made that movie and got it out within a year. And it was really tough to get it. I mean, when we were pitching it, people were like, ooh, I don't know. And I mean, here's a little funny story is that between Finding Kind, Empowerment Project, Screenagers, like some of the other films that we have worked on and taken out, everyone was like, yeah, we're going to fill the theater. We're going to get everyone in our community to come. It's going to be so great. We're going to be empowered. We're going to deal with screen addiction. We're going to, like deal with bullying. And it was awesome. The minute we started pitching Angst, all these same people, because they always book it's the same customers that keep coming back. They all kept saying, okay, we're going to do it. But are you going to send us the film on time? Do you think anyone's going to come? Do you think the projector will work? What if it doesn't work? What do we do? Like suddenly the topic itself, we're having like therapy sessions every day, all day long with our customer base, all the schools that normally it was like never a conversation. And so it was really interesting that the topic itself makes people anxious. And some people were like, ooh, I'm afraid to go. Will it trigger me? Will I have an anxiety attack if I'm in the theater? Will our school counselors be overrun with all the kids coming to the office and we don't have enough counselors? And I will tell you, after doing almost, coming up on 2,000 screenings, is that maybe one or two more kids go into the counselor's office. And those are the two kids you're so grateful you now know. But mostly kids are talking to each other. They're talking to their parents. They're talking to their coach. They're reaching out. They're the best friend's mom. And the other thing is that it is like this collective community sigh of relief. It is community therapy. People are like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Right.
Or, oh my gosh, I'm actually kind of normal. Like everybody experiences this. And it is truly, it's had such a positive impact on these communities. And we do calls every Tuesday. So anyone who's working on, who's hosting the film can call in and talk to us directly. And it's just nothing but great stories. And I mean, it's inspired us in ways we're learning things we never imagined.
That's amazing. So Angst was giving everybody angst, huh?
Well, it's in their head, they were having anxiety
right.
about going to the movie.
Yeah.
But when they actually got there, they were like, oh my God, like this is so good. A lot of grownups were saying that, a lot of self-identification, like, oh my God, that was me growing up. Or I wouldn't have self-medicated if I'd seen this movie as a kid. Or, kids were saying, oh, I really need my mom and dad to see this so they know I'm not making it up.
Right.
Or I want my friends to see this because I know they're struggling and I want them to know they're not alone. And I mean, it's just been phenomenal.
That's awesome. And I'm really intrigued with, we talk a lot on the show about just social media anxiety and the best foot forward. And, there's all kinds of statistics with youth suicide and youth depression, anxiety, highest that it's ever been. And of course, there's a lot of contributing factors, but social media is definitely the largest one. Tell me a little bit about what we should expect of the new film, Like. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So Like is a documentary about the impact of social media on our lives. And that kind of came out of, in making Angst, came up a lot in the interviews and the research that people felt that social media was to blame for the spike in anxiety and depression and suicide. And I just thought, God, is that true? Like, really, is that what's going on? And so I felt it deserved to be its own movie. And what we've learned is that, yes, social media definitely has a direct effect on all of the above, but it's a lot of things. So social media is a big component, but it's also technology is impacting our sleep. We live in a plugged in, on demand, breaking news world. And when you couple that with lack of sleep, when you couple that with, it's social media platforms have been designed to keep our time on site in order for them to have valuation. So they know how to design to, light up that part of the brain that creates, the reward system part of the brain that says, that feels good, get more, get more. So I think that here's the bottom line. There's so many negative things about social media, but there are also so many good things about social media. And the most important thing of all is that we as human beings have the power of choice. The power of choice to train ourselves to have, first to have awareness and then to train ourselves to create moderation and balance in our lives. If you're going to pick up your phone 20 times a day, pick it up 10 times a day. If you don't know how much time you spend on social media, try just 20 minutes, because there's a study that was done by a company called Moment. The sample size was 200,000 people. They basically did this whole survey and found that certain apps can make you feel good and certain apps can fill you with regret. But the ones that fill you with regret, which of course are social media, gaming, that kind of stuff, really only happens if you spend more than 20 minutes.
Right.
So when you sort of realize, okay, so let's not do more than 20 minutes and I'll do it once or twice a day, then at least you're only spending less than an hour on social media. That means you got 23 hours to sleep and do other things in life. And the apps that actually can make you feel good are music, meditation, productivity apps, information apps, the weather, even your email. Like those make you feel productive. They make you feel good. And you actually, sure, we can all answer emails for 6 hours, but you don't leave feeling icky. You actually leave feeling accomplished.
You haven't seen how many unread emails I have. I don't ever feel good or accomplished. But no, that makes.
If you're looking at the ones you haven't answered yet.
Yeah, I got to flip it and look at the It's all about positivity, right? If I flipped it and said, "Hey, I just answered 20 emails versus I have 200,000 I haven't touched," then I might be good. So
glass half full.
Exactly. I think that positive community goes, in so many ways. And I'm sure as you're talking about the feedback you're getting from the films, just gaining that awareness and getting folks talking. But having said the parent side of things that are potentially watching the films, the teachers and the administrators, as well as the kids, there's been a lot of talk on who should be having mental health conversations. Should it be schools? Should it be families? Should it be coaches? Should it, who should it be? Based on, all these screenings and so forth that you guys have done at school, are you seeing now that these conversations are kind of starting and even talking to their peers, are you seeing more parents kind of getting involved in saying, oh, my kid came home and talked to me about this film they saw, now I'm going to go watch it? Or, where should that, the conversations obviously should happen everywhere, right? But where should these conversations happen in your mind?
I think that conversations, in order to have meaning, have to be sort of held in the right context, in the right environment, with really clear expectations. I'm a big fan of one of the things, like whenever we're filming, especially with experts, a lot of times I'll sit there and I'm behind the camera and I'm just saying, okay, can you say it again? But you really need to use layman terminology. We need to have conversation using terms and words that paint pictures that people can remember and repeat, that make people feel smart, that make people feel like, you know what, I got this, I can do this. Not overwhelmed because people are using big words that they don't understand, and you got to be highly degreed and licensed in order to do anything. So that's the first thing. And then we take these movies out, and whether it's a school screening where you invite the entire community at night to watch, and you have a discussion guide, there's materials that are handed out, and to keep the conversation going when you go home. But you also can have them at daytime assemblies or in the classrooms with talking points, and then it's interactive, right? But then we're also doing it in corporations where they'll hold a screening at a corporate headquarters, and then they have virtual links available for employees, again, with discussion guides, and we'll record a panel with some of the top leadership at a corporation to have them model how important it is to talk about your feelings, to talk about stuff you're going through, because we need to be there for each other, to help each other, not just at home privately.
Right.
Where parents are sort of fumbling around trying to figure it out, and they're on a 2-year wait list to get their kid into a therapist, or they don't have the insurance, or they don't have the this or that. And it's just like, holy cow. Like, so we target the sort of the parents at work. We target the kids, the educators, and some of the parents as well at school. And then hopefully that information gets disseminated, and at home it can be sort of continuing to evolve and to grow. And between churches and boys and girls clubs, like when it's that conversation is everywhere, you create a lot of safe spaces to be yourself and to express yourself in a safe, healthy way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, we've had this conversation a bunch of time on the show before of the difference in mental health and mental illness, right? And I think a lot of depending upon culture, demographic, background, there's a lot of people out there, back to your point on, diving in the education side of things, that think of mental health as mental illness, right? And, well, my kid doesn't need to be in a psych ward, or, my kid isn't, living under a bridge. I hear that all the time in regards to when people say mental health. And so I think that, there's a lot of amazing people that are paving the way and spreading awareness on mental health. But I think, there's still a significant amount of parents out there that think mental health is mental illness.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Stigma.
Yeah. And I haven't shared this story on the podcast yet, and I was thinking about this morning. I was like, do I want to share this? This woman listens to the podcast. She might be angry, but I'm going to share it anyway. So I was at this female CEO event this week in Austin. A lot of very smart, affluent women, so forth. And this woman, we were talking about what we do. And I said, well, I have all these companies, but I'm most passionate about my nonprofit. We started talking about it. And she said, I have somebody for you. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, a partnership or, a nonprofit organization. She said, driving here today, she said, on XYZ corner in Austin, Texas, she said, there was this guy, it was raining and he was panhandling, and I bought him a hamburger. And she's like, I bet he has a mental health illness. Do you want me to tell you where he is so you can go talk to him? And I'm like,
wow.
And I just sat there completely speechless. And I'm like, it just dawned on me. Like, I couldn't get it off my mind of, I don't know if this woman has kids or whatever. I'm like, we still have so far to go on awareness. If she thinks mental health is the homeless guy on the corner, that I'm going to go over there and save it. And she said some other things that were very offensive. But if she thinks I'm going to go save this person, pick them up and take them to a psych ward, I'm like, how do you translate that every homeless person has a mental illness and that mental health in general is just the guy on the side of the road? And so It got me thinking, there's so much education that needs to be done parent-wise, because if that was somebody's mom or dad, right, and they said they were having issues, they're like, oh, well, you're not homeless. You don't have mental health issues, And it really irritated me, just of the lack of knowledge. And I guess going back to the positivity thing, it's it's positive in the fact that we still have a lot of work to do. And I know there's a lot of amazing organizations like yours and mine and others that are trying to spread awareness. But it was also very kind of taken back of how far off we still are with a lot of demographics.
Well, I think we have so much work ahead of us. It's, when we can say mental health, and it is and it lands on us in our body, and the energy we feel is the same as if someone said physical health. Right? It's a good thing when we're addressing our physical health. When we're addressing our mental health, it's like, uh-oh, what's wrong? Are they okay? Are they stable? Can they, when we can learn to move past that, just like with cancer, right? Someone gets a cancer diagnosis, it's like, oh my God, we don't have enough of those stories of okay, cancer, okay, so you got to do some treatment, but you're going to live.
Right.
When we start assuming the good outcome as opposed to the negative outcome, I think it helps us all.
Right.
If we can start, that's why it's so important to normalize the conversation. But I also realized in taking this film out and listening to the thousands of people who respond, not just through emails and Facebook posts or whatever, but also through all of our surveys and the data we're collecting, they don't know how to talk about things.
Right.
And they don't know how to respond when someone reaches out to them. And they feel afraid that they don't know how to help someone other than maybe finding some help, taking them to someone who could help them, which is great. But it's interesting. We've had a lot of feedback from parents who said, I wish you had in the movie, showing me trying, a parent trying to talk to a kid who's clearly suffering and the kid won't respond. The kid won't,
open up. Yeah.
Go. They won't be compliant. How do we do that? My kid won't talk to me about this. And there's definitely something going on, and everybody knows it, including my son or daughter, but we just can't, there's no budget. What do we do? And It's really interesting. Just the most basic stuff is what, like with Finding Kind, the movie, the very first one I got to work on with the filmmakers about kindness and bullying was, I sort of thought, really, we're going to take a movie out and the message is to be kind? Aren't people just born kind?
No.
And I learned in taking out that movie, because boy, did I meet a lot of bullies when we took that movie out, is that people do need to be taught and modeled how to be kind, what kindness looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, and then practicing it, finding ways to keep that practice up. And so the same goes for talking about your feelings.
Yeah.
And when you're hurting, and not be ashamed or afraid or feel weak to ask for help. And it's going to take time.
Yeah, the being kind thing is crazy because we live in such a negative world that the youth really thinks when you are kind to somebody, it should be the opposite, right? We should be teaching our kids to be kind. We should be kind to others, and that just doesn't typically happen. I've kind of been on this mission lately to do exactly what you're saying, and like the positivity. And so when I'm, whether I'm in a, gas station getting gas or, getting food in a drive-through or at a restaurant or whatever, I've been really making an effort, especially, with mental health awareness coming up, really just talking to people, right? And being positive. And if it's, hey, I like your shirt, just trying to just spread positivity, right? And so it was really interesting. The other night I was at this restaurant and this mom was eating by herself with 3 children, and they all had the most beautiful, thick, curly hair. And I was like, wow, that is 3 beautiful girls. And they were probably, 13 down to 7 or so. And so they were walking out at the same time. And I told the mom, I said, your girls have the most beautiful hair. And the littlest girl that was already in front of me turned around and said, Mom, what did that lady say to you? Did she say something rude? And the mom looks at her and says, no, she said you guys have beautiful hair. And the girl just looked so puzzled because she thought that I was making some negative comment. And the older girl then just lit up and said, I do my hair myself. And yeah, it's really thick, and just had this conversation. But it was so funny to me, the reaction, like she assumed just that I was saying something negative about, her and her sisters. And I was like, God, when we can change that world to be able to say something nice and people not make, such a big deal that someone's complimenting them,
No, that's wonderful. I think that is so great. Even a smile, those simple compliments when parents, you got to do something like that and those kids got to see it. But when we also model it for our own children, being kind,
yeah, absolutely,
reaching out, comforting, asking how someone is feeling, that's how we help model it and teach our children.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sheila, last question. So if I have you on the podcast 2-3 years from now, what's the goal? What's the mission for Indie Flicks? What's success? What are you looking to kind of change in this mental health world in your eyes?
In 3 to 5 years, so Angst, and The Upstanders, which is what I'm shooting right now, is a trilogy. And Upstanders is all about cyberbullying and bullying and the brain science behind it and the path forward. I think what I'm learning now is I use film to really, it's a tool to raise awareness, to bring people together, to connect people through these movies, and have we're now creating other content around it, whether it's a creative coping toolkit, which is basically, it's like 20 activities that gamify talking about your feelings and mental wellness and how to respond to people who need help, how to reach out for help. But it makes it fun and engaging. It's peer-led, or it can be led by a teacher or something. The sort of fun tools and things we're creating to go along with the movie, which is sort of the first piece that gets the conversation started or opening up. I love using film to bring people together. So in 3 to 5 years, I hope I have several more movies. We've got about 6 on the roadmap. And, at the end of the day, this is what I want every movie I make to say, or every movie I'm involved with, is that the ultimate message is that we as human beings have the power of choice.
Love it.
To choose to be healthy, to take care of ourselves, to model exactly how we would like to be treated and how we think others can be better at treating themselves. And I think that's how we can actually sort of move the needle a little bit in the world.
Yeah.
If everybody just, even if, I think there was some statistic that if it was like, I don't know, 20% or 10% of the world's population, maybe it's even less, meditated, we'd have no war.
Yeah.
Like it's really interesting. Like just tiny shifts with a lot of people can change the world. And I believe that honestly, if we can start being better at communicating, being better and really honoring that which we were born to do, which is to be there for each other, to let each other know that we matter and that we're heard, I think the world will be a very different place.
I so agree. And thanks for everything you're doing with these films. Love what you're doing, and we'll continue to follow the journey. And before we move on to our next guest, Sheila, tell everybody where they can find the films and follow you on social.
So you can actually just go to indieflix.com and you can find everything you need there. And then I'm on Instagram as IndieFlix CEO.
Love it.
And as well as Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn. And haven't mastered Snapchat and don't plan on it. But Facebook, Instagram, all of that, either IndieFlix CEO is the easiest.
Cool. So click on that in the show notes, click on the link, check out the films that they're producing and doing an amazing job spreading mental health awareness. Sheila, thanks so much for being on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Our next guest on the show is paving the way in community storytelling with her company, What's Your Story? Robyn Shumer is the founder of What's Your Story, a community storytelling initiative about life-changing moments to raise awareness for nonprofits. She's a TEDx storyteller who waited over 30 years to tell her story of anorexia that she developed at 11 years old, and her lifeline management of her eating disorder, and ultimately her complicated path to motherhood. Robyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, awesome. I'd love to hear kind of the backstory. Obviously, you've dealt with an eating disorder, but what really made you start What's Your Story?
I started What's Your Story as a call to action after I gave my TED Talk called What's Your Story? And what happened, Carrie, was that over the last couple of years, I've heard many influential speakers and leaders decide to be vulnerable and share their own stories. It could be their family's encounters with mental health, their own curiosity through therapy. And really what I learned from this exercise is that I had nothing to hide about my eating disorder or any of the events that have shaped who I am today. And in fact, I have a lot to gain from sharing my story, and really so do you. And so after I gave my TED Talk, I decided to start this community storytelling initiative. And every event also raises money for a nonprofit. It's a platform where people can literally share their stories. It could be about mental health, physical health. It could be about that time you went out west skiing and you broke your leg the first time. I really just want people to begin thinking about what are their pivotal moments of failure and accomplishment, their moments of deepest, most profound learning and growth, and really what small thing happened that impacted them in a big way, because we can find truth and understanding through storytelling. And unlike technology that changes every 5 minutes, it's a timeless skill.
Right. No, it's great. And you've been doing these community storytelling events. You've done these amazing videos of not only your story, but other people's stories from these events. What's been the impact that you've seen from these events? I know you and I've talked, and there's been some kind of amazing virality to some of these videos, and obviously you're gaining great awareness here. But, you know, what have you really walked away at some of these events from an impact perspective?
It's really interesting because the impact is really end to end. It's on the storytellers, it's on the audience members too. So from storytellers, I have so much respect for them because they are literally inviting people to change the way people think about mental health or anything that is related to stigma. And the speakers are benefiting because it becomes part of their journey. And they are subsequently inspiring and uplifting other people to heal themselves. And what's really, really neat is that every event creates engagement. So every time a video is viewed, people are connecting, even if it's remotely. One of our videos has over 39,000 views just since the end of February.
It's awesome.
And one of my new storytellers, this is a woman that found me on social. She drove 4 hours to attend an event. She didn't know anybody. And she told her story for the first time. And she said, the amount of love that I received from a room full of complete strangers was something that I will never forget.
That's awesome.
And really, at the end of the day, What's Your Story is trying to create engagement and connections, and we're trying to make mental health cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, not only somebody can be sitting in the audience, not ready to share their story or see a video and be compelled to now share their story. And I think as more and more people share those stories and take down this highlight reel of social media and really get deeper than, here's my perfect family, or, things from that nature, it really starts to use social in more of a positive way than in the toxic way. And that leads me to my next question. You dealt with an eating disorder. You've shared that story. It's an amazing story. Folks should go check out your story and watch that video. But you had an eating disorder starting in elementary school. And I'm assuming, when you were in elementary school, the social media and cyberbullying and things like that were a little bit different when we grew up than now. How do you think that impacts now? We have this highlight reel on social media, all these celebrities that are face tuning their pictures, making themselves look super skinny, best life forward. And, the kids we have today that see that have this false sense of what reality is. Do you think that's driving more eating disorders than we've seen in the past, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, geez, we don't have enough time for my thoughts on that.
Right.
I have a lot of opinions. I think that, as with other mental health issues, brain health definitely is an influence in developing an eating disorder. And I also think that there are an array of social factors and influencers. I think the highlight reel doesn't help at all because it makes people look flawless. And, popular media isn't helping because they focus on photoshopping everything, even when they say they don't.
Right.
And, People Magazine has this feature in every issue that focuses on a woman and what she eats every day.
Yeah, that always makes me feel horrible, right? I'm like,
yes, I'm sorry, I had more than a chia seed today.
Yeah.
And for me, growing up in the 80s, Carrie, a few things were really clear to me. And like you said, this was before social media and cyberbullying. I say in my talk that I was the first anorexic that my pediatrician ever met. And, growing up in the 80s, a couple of things were clear: that being thin was a must. And I don't think these things have changed. Being thin is a must if anybody wants a shot at having friends or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I think that socially, being thin and pretty tends to have a higher exchange rate than brains. And I think that the highlight reel still reinforces to young women that our bodies are an ornament for ridicule and discussion. And I think it really needs to stop.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have a son and he's 11, and just kind of this, even at his age, it's, I don't want to wear this shirt, people will make fun of this, or I have to wear, this undershirt because that's what things are doing. And I'm really trying to teach him, like, you need to be you, right? And, kids make fun of other kids because they have their own self-esteem issues, but it's really, this bullying is such a trickle effect of, kids lashing out because someone made fun of them. So then now they're going to go make fun of another kid. And it's just this downward cycle of, and, schools don't want to call it bullying because they have all these protocols now, right? And I argue with administrators all the time of, oh, well, if you say the word bullying, we have this certain protocol. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because it is bullying. In any other sense of the realm, it's bullying. But because schools have these new criteria of what is really bullying, like, is there going to be harm? And it's like, there doesn't need to be physical harm for it to be bullying. And so, I know we're both part of the Mental Health Unite group. There's a large group of us that are trying to really change mental health awareness. And I know a lot of us are really focused on, starting earlier in schools. And, I was talking about this the other day is, you start watching puberty videos in the 4th grade. And, then they watch a different one in the 5th grade, and then they watch a different one in middle school. It's like, where is the mental health awareness should be standard like a puberty video? And we don't have to call it mental health. Maybe we call it depression. Maybe we talk it anxiety. And Sheila talked about it earlier in the podcast. But, where is your goal? Where is your vision? What do you want to do with What's Your Story to really impact mental health? If we're looking back 5 years from now, what's your vision?
Mm-hmm. I have a friend and a colleague who says it best, and he says, let's do for mental health what we've done for cancer.
Yeah.
Let's create a world where we teach kids as much about their mental health as their dental health. Let's create a world where we bring dinner and casseroles to a family when they're struggling with depression or anxiety and not just recovering from surgery or cancer or the flu. And my vision, I really want people all around, this country to use the platform of What's Your Story to create these community storytelling events, raise money for the nonprofit that matters most to you, and create a place where we are normalizing mental health. It's such a very common part of the human condition. We're all unique. We all live with it in some way. And it's treatable. The earlier that you get treatment, just like any chronic condition, the better the outcome.
Yeah, it's funny that you said, like cancer. I was just talking to a, high-powered woman executive yesterday who had dealt with a lot of mental health just in the pressure of being, kind of a woman CEO, and her mission is to really change things in, workplace, right? And she said, based on her culture, she said, I wish I would have had cancer because of the way my family treated me and thought I was so crazy that if I would have had cancer, I would have had this family support versus being looked at like this complete outcast. And I was like, wow, how profound is that? That you wished you would have had a cancer versus being diagnosed bipolar because it was socially unacceptable to be labeled with bipolar.
Well, I hope that this pioneering woman is getting out there and really changing the way
She is, and she's passionate about it. And it's so funny to me that there's so many executives that have amazing businesses. They're doing amazing things in their business life, but their true passion is really changing mental health. And I love what you guys are doing with What's Your Story, because as more people tell these stories, whether they're a CEO or whether they're working the counter at Starbucks, it will continue to allow people to be open to have those conversations, even if their family and friends think they're crazy and aren't educated on mental health. And it still allows people to feel comfortable having these stories, to make them feel better with their self-esteem and their confidence. So continue what you're doing, Robyn. Love what you're doing. And I know we'll constantly be connected on all of our group of folks trying to change mental health in the U.S. and globally.
Yeah, and Carrie, thank you for what you're doing. You're really creating an avenue for people to connect as well, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Robyn, it's been so great to have you on the show. Everybody go to wysusa.com. Go look at some of the amazing videos of folks sharing their story for What's Your Story, and go also look at Robyn's She shares an amazing story about her anorexia, and it's definitely a great story for you to go look at as well. So everybody, please share the podcast for Mental Health Awareness Month. Subscribe to get your shows. The mental health shows are every Thursday. Leave feedback, leave reviews. If you have any questions for any of the guests today, please let us know. We'll happily get you in touch. Robyn, thanks so much again for being on the show, and we will continue to follow your journey.
Thank you. Be well.
This podcast has come to a close. To hear more from the Executive Innovation Show podcast, subscribe, submit questions, and share the love. Follow us on social. We're everywhere.